Well, hi, Sean. This is Mark from eSol Solutions. When we went through the Adobe Premiere class with you, we didn't have enough time to go through the Lesson 10 in the Adobe Classroom in a book that you received. Lesson 10 was on editing and mixing audio. And that's really important. So I wanted to go over some of the highlights of this to at least give you a basic understanding if you haven't had time to look at the chapter. And let me go over a few things for you. I'm going to come over and actually start on page 252 where it says adjusting audio volume. Before that, there's lots of information on showing waveforms, the audio meters, samples, and all this, and the mixer, and lots of things like that. But really, when the rubber hits the road, the basic manipulation of the volume of our clips is what I'm going to go over here. So I'm actually over on page 252. I have the training file open for Chapter 10. And I'm on the excuse me sequence. Now there's two tracks here. If you look here on the first set of the video here, it has two tracks within audio 1, a left and a right. So this is a stereo on this A1 track. The other audio over here is a little bit different where it has your left audio stream and your right audio stream are on separate audio tracks. So depending on how it was recorded, this will look different. So you can have a stereo track on one track, or you can have both channels on separate tracks. So I'm just going to look at this here. On the bottom of page 252 it says, this is a simple sequence with two clips in it. In fact, it's the same clip added to the sequence twice. One version has been interpreted as stereo and the other one has been interpreted as mono channels. Over on 253 it says click the first clip to select it here. And I'm going to go up to the upper left and open up the effect controls. And again, that's in the upper left where the source panel is at, and there's effect controls. With this selected, we can come over and look and see what different controls we have over here. Now we know we have the video motion controls, we have opacity, we have things for time remapping, but down in here's where I want to look at the audio here. So here's an audio volume level. Now I'm just going to remind you that this blue stopwatch, whenever we see this, means we could set a keyframe up to control the volume of the audio as it plays by adding different keyframes. What they want you to see down here is the channel volume, and it says left and right. That's because this video is using a stereo interpretation on A1. So you're actually able to control the left and the right channels on this one audio track here. Now, if I put the timeline over this clip like this, we're moving it around here. We're over on step 4. It says position the timeline playhead somewhere over the first clip where you would like to add a keyframe. It says it doesn't make too much difference where you choose if you intend to only make one adjustment. So if I only want to make one adjustment to the volume in this, I can just go ahead, come over here and add a keyframe. Now what I'm going to do here is on step 5. They want me to make sure I can see the audio keyframes when I add them. So it says click the timeline display settings menu. So we're going to come over here, and this is the wrench, and that symbolizes this timeline display settings. When I click on this, I'm going to make sure I'm showing my audio keyframes. It should be on. So I'm going to make sure it's on. Then whenever I set a keyframe in here, you'll be able to see it. Also, it's kind of hard to see here, but there's a white line right here. It's right over on just in between both these channels, and what that white line represents is the overall volume for this clip. When it's in the middle here, it's the audio volume level is at the level it was recorded. If I press and drag up on this line, I can increase the volume. Let's say I increase it up approximately 3 dB and then play it. Now you can't hear much difference. 3 dB is not an awful lot of increase or decrease, but they want to show you this white line here. I brought that white line, that audio level line there, back down to 0. There we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a keyframe. So I'm going to come over in the effects control panel. I'm on step 7, and I'm just going to click on the blue number so I can set the volume of the keyframe. So over here where it says volume and level, I can go ahead and I can run this level up, we'll say a certain amount, like 4 dB. It adds a keyframe right there, and it also raised this bar here, or this line that indicates the volume it was recorded at. It's been increased 4 dB. So this adds a keyframe here. If I go up here, and if you watch this area down here on the timeline, as I change this volume, we can see that bar go up and down. So we know that we can set up a single keyframe and affect the overall volume of this clip. So it says on step 7 on page 253, Premiere Pro adds a keyframe, and the rubber band has moved down or up, indicating a change in volume. The difference is subtle, but you'll become more familiar with the Premiere Pro interface. It'll stand out more and more clearly. So now, if I come over with the second version of this clip, remember this has volume and channel volume where we have a left and a right. As soon as I move my clip over or click on this second clip, what you'll see here is there's an audio 1 for audio 1 track and an audio 2 for audio 2 track, and there's just a separate volume for each. There's not the ability here now to control the individual lefts or rights on the single track because that was stereo. Now the audio's been split up into 2 mono tracks. So the left channel is on the audio 1 track, and the right channel is on the audio 2 track. So they're just showing you this is another way. If you want to adjust only the volume on the, we'll say the left track, you could come down here and you can drag this up and down. You could go back up into your effects panel and click on, we'll say, the volume for audio 1, which is the left track of the stereo track, and I could change this number and I can move it up and down, and I can hit the stopwatch and add a keyframe. So there's nothing wrong with doing either one. So we can go ahead and we can add keyframes to adjust this level. So there, just want you to know you can set the overall volume this way. Now I'm going to open up another one, and it says adjusting audio gain. It says most music is created with the loudest possible signal to maximize the difference between the signal and the background noise. This is really mostly too loud for most video sequences. To adjust this issue, you can adjust the clip's audio gain. This method works similar to the adjustment you made in the last exercise, but it is applied to the clip in the project panel. So not on the timeline. This is actually affecting the master clip in the project panel. So any parts of the clip you use in this sequence will already have the adjustment. You can also apply audio gain adjustments to multiple clips in a single step, both in the project panel and timeline. It says open up the clip Cooking Montage MP3, and they mean open it. They're going to go over here and we're going to find that clip. So let's see here. We're going to find the, probably under sources. Nope, I lied to you. The music, I guess. Cooking Montage. Now this is just a music file. I'm going to double click on it and put it up in the source window. Because it is only audio, it shows up in the source window automatically. There's no video, so that's why it shows up automatically. So now we can move the playhead around, and we can see by the waveform this is peaked out almost to the max on a lot of this volume of this audio, which is way too loud for what I need if I'm going to put it for maybe play it underneath a voiceover or something like that. So now I can go over here on page 255, and if I want to adjust this clip's master audio, I can right click and I'm going to find audio gain. This is on the top of page 255. I can adjust the gain to a certain amount. Now there's options here. There's two options really. There are two options in the audio gain dialog box that you should learn about now. Set the gain to. Use this option to specify a particular adjustment for your clip. Or adjust the gain by. Use this option to specify an incremental adjustment. So if I know I want the audio at 6 dB, boom, I'll use the first one, set the gain to. If I'd like to incrementally change it and then listen to it, maybe I'll apply, maybe it's too loud, I'll say minus 3 dB, listen to it. Maybe I would add another one. So it says here, for example, if you use the adjust gain by, if you apply a minus 3 dB, this will adjust the set gain to the amount of 3 dB. If you go to this menu a second time and apply another minus 3 dB adjustment, the set gain will now change to 6. So this is saying that specifically a specific number of set gain and so on. So I'm going to set the gain to a minus 12 dB. Come right up here, I'm going to drag on this to minus 12 dB. This sets it to that specific amount. So this isn't doing any incremental like we adjust gain by. If I click OK, we can see how the audio level's been dropped a minus 12 dB. So this will update the master clip in the project panel. Now remember, just below, just above on page 255, just above where it says normalizing audio. This is really important. It says changes like this, where you're adjusting the audio gain in the bin, will not update the clips already edited into the sequence. So this is changing the master clip in the project panel bin area. And if I've already put this cooking montage music on the timeline or in a sequence, it's not going to change that. That's already over there. That's done. So if you want to adjust the clip in the sequence, you could right click on a clip, let me show you here, and this clip in the sequence, I can go right over here and right click on audio gain and set it in the sequence. So remember, if it's already over in the sequence and then you go back into the project area and make the change on the master clip, it's not going to affect these over here. Okay. Let's go ahead and look at something else called normalizing audio. It says normalizing audio is similar to adjusting gain. In fact, normalization results in an adjustment to the clip's gain. The difference in normalization is based on the automated analysis rather than your or my subjective judgment. When you normalize a clip, Premiere Pro analyzes the audio to identify the single highest peak, or in other words, the loudest part of the audio. The gain for the clip is then adjusted automatically so that that highest peak matches a level you specify. So this takes into account the loudest portion of this audio clip. We set an adjustment, like we'll say if it's too loud, we'll say minus 6 dB. Well, that takes that highest peak and it brings it down 6 dB. So let's see what happens here, and let's see if it adjusts the other audio in those sequences also. It says on top of page 256, you can have Premiere Pro adjust volume for multiple clips so they match any perceived volume you like. And here's the important part. Imagine working with multiple clips of a voiceover recorded over several days. Perhaps because of different recording setups or working with different microphones, several clips may have different volumes. You can select all the clips and in a single step have Premiere Pro automatically set their volumes to match. This saves significant time you might have to spend manually going through each clip one by one to make adjustments. So if I've got multiple different people and I'm using them in my video, we've interviewed them or used their voiceover, this will attempt to kind of even out the volume between all those different people. So it says try normalizing some clips by the following steps. Page 256, step 1. Open the Journey to New York sequence. So I'm going to go over here on my master sequences. I'm going to find Journey to New York, and I'm going to make this audio level here so you can see it a little bit better. So we can see there's a peak here, and then it's much higher here on this one. This one's even higher. This one's about the same amount. Then it comes back down, and I'm going to hit my backslash key to see all my clips, and this one comes back down again. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to apply a normalization so this volume level for all these clips is kind of normalized or evened out. It says you can play the sequence and watch the audio levels. So let me put this to home and watch these levels over here and see where they go. Minus 18, minus 7, whoa, almost over 0, minus 12, okay, so we go from something pretty comfortable to very loud even more, and then back to more or less the comfortable range. So we're going to ask Premiere Pro to normalize these. Now, the first thing I have to do is I think the highest peaks, which were really up here by 0, need to be brought down. Boy, I'd like to keep them around between minus 6 and minus 12. So I think I'm going to normalize the highest peaks down to about minus 8. So let me go ahead. I'm going to take my black arrow here. I'm going to drag and select all these audio clips. Just this, not the A2. And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to right click on one of those selected clips. I'm on step 4, page 256. And I'm going to choose audio gain. It says I'm going to select normalize all peaks to a minus 8 dB. Normalize all peaks to a minus 8 dB. So now what I do is I interpret that as meaning it's going to take everything and drop it minus 8 dB relative to where everything else is at. So if it was at 10, if it was at 10, it went to minus 2, and if it was at whatever, it would be relative to all of those. I'm going to click OK. Now watch these waveforms down here at the bottom when this clicks. See how they're all basically all evened out, and they're all around minus 8, minus 12. So those highest peaks are at the minus 8, just what we told it to be. So now the volume level between the clips is easier to listen to. There's not this up and down. Page 257. Every clip is adjusted so that the loudest peaks are at minus 8 dB. The music adds to the overall level. The music adds to the overall level displayed in the audio meters. To see the level for the voiceover only, we're going to solo the option for audio 1 track. So I don't want to listen to the music, I only want to hear her. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here in audio 1. It's really hard to see, but there's a little S right here in this audio track header. I'm going to click on that and solo that. Now we're just going to hear her. Okay, so by soloing that track, we're not listening to the background music. We can just hear her and listen to it. If you choose normalize max peak rather than normalize all peaks to, Premiere Pro will make an adjustment based upon the loudest moment of all the clips combined, as if there were one clip. The same amount of adjustments will be applied to every clip, maintaining the relative levels of all the clips. And I think that's a little bit dangerous, because if you get a super spike of audio just in one clip and the rest of them are recorded down in the minus 8, minus 12 dB area, then that really offsets or influences the audio level to be brought down much lower than what it needs to be. So by it looking at the overall clips and normalizing all the peaks, I think we have a more even audio level. Let's come over to page 258. This is a feature called auto ducking, and this just came out in the more recent versions of Premiere Pro. It basically means that Premiere Pro, let's say you have a voiceover track and you have a music track, it will know when the music is playing and the voiceover is playing. If they're playing at the same time, it will reduce the volume of the music, duck it down, bring it down so it's not overpowering the voiceover. We used to have to set up keyframes on our audio to do this. We would manually duck the music. But now there's an auto duck feature. Let's take a look at this. One of the most common tasks when working on audio mix is reducing the music level during sections of speech. If there's a voiceover track, for example, you may want to get the music to get quieter just when information is being shared, and then become dominant element in the mix again when it isn't. This is commonly the way radio DJs speak over music. The music automatically getting quieter when the DJ speaks. This technique is called ducking. You can manually add audio keyframes to apply ducking, and you'll see how to do this later. But there's an automated way to do it, using the Essential Sound Panel. You'll learn about the Essential Sound Panel in more detail in Chapter 11, Sweetening Sound. Now, that's not a chapter we go through in the fundamentals class. If you have an interest and you have an hour, I will beg you to go through the lesson 11 in the book and look at the different ways that you can reduce noise and hum. You can change the equalization of the frequencies to accentuate a woman's voice, a man's voice. It's awesome. It's really awesome. We used to have to take our audio from a Premiere Pro project, send it over into Adobe Premiere, work and sweeten it there, it was called. But now we have a lot of those features now built into Premiere. And I beg you to go to Chapter 11 and work through that. It says on page 258, number 1 here, it says, continuing working on the Journey to New York sequence, make sure all the voiceover clips in audio track 1 are selected. In the Essential Sound Panel, well, one way we can get there is if you go to the very top of your screen, we can pick the Audio workspace. And now over here I have the Essential Sound. Now if you don't want to work in the dedicated audio workspace, you can always go under Window and bring up the Essential Sound Panel. So it's over here. So these are already selected. We know all of these are dialogue. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to assign the tag to the selection to enable editing options based upon what kind of audio it is. Well, it's dialogue. So when I click on this, a plethora of options open up. So now we can come over here on page 259 and I can see my audio tracks. It says in the Essential Sound Panel, select the box or checkbox to enable ducking. So let's see here, repair, loudness, clarity, dynamics, EQ, speech, creative, clip volume. Now here's a little bit of a fooler here. There's a scroll bar here. If I can get this rascal to scroll up and down. So I don't see ducking right now. Well, let me see here. If I can't find ducking, let's look around here and see if we can find it. Loudness, repair, clarity, EQ, enhanced speech. Wow, this is kind of embarrassing. Where is the auto? Where's the feature for ducking? And so I'm going to look around here and snoop a little bit. Forgive me, I'm going to go ahead and pause here for a second. Well, Sean, I messed you up. We're not supposed to have the voiceover clip, or the voiceovers. That's in the front part of this. So on step 1, we're supposed to select all these tracks and make sure they're set to dialogue. Here's what I missed. Over on page 259, it says they now want us to resize the audio 2 track over here in the header. It says select the clip in the fine print. So now if I come over here in the Essentials panel, we've designated the voiceover clips as dialogue. Now we're going to designate this audio as music. And bingo, there's ducking. So I apologize for missing that. So it says in the Essential Sound panel on page 259, it says select the box to enable ducking and take a look at the options. Duck against. There are multiple types of audio. You can select whether one, several, or all types of audio will trigger automatic ducking. So it says duck against. I'm going to click the checkbox. I can duck against dialogue, other music, sound effects, ambient audio, and duck against clips without assigned audio type. So I'm going to duck it against dialogue. Sensitivity. The higher the sensitivity, the lower the trigger audio will need to cause ducking. So if I lower this, it'll be more sensitive to voiceover and drop it quicker. If I increase it, it won't be so sensitive to other dialogue, and it may take a little more loudness to make it duck. Reduce by. Once it ducks, how many dB do we want to reduce? Now, I didn't get a chance to tell you this, but basically anybody over the age of, we'll say, 40 can really not hear a 3 dB change in audio either way, up or down. So just keep that in mind. Now you're going to have to adjust this and listen to it and adjust this and so on. Fades. The slower the fade setting, the longer it will take for the music to get quieter and then louder again. See, this is all something you got to work with. Generate keyframes. Click this button to apply settings and add keyframes to the music clip. So this is actually going to look where it needs to duck based upon our specifications, and then automatically add keyframes to the audio, the music waveform in the timeline, and we can go back if we have to and adjust those. This is really awesome. This is what we used to do by hand or manually. It says step 5. Here's the settings we're going to start with. We're going to duck against. It's already on dialogue. Sensitivity, we're going to move to 6. Reduce by 8 dB. Fade 500 milliseconds. That's how long it takes. So I'll just bring it over here. If I wanted something exact, I could double click and type in 500. And now I've got it. And now I'm going to click to generate keyframes. And this rascal's going to look at this audio, and in a few seconds it's going to go ahead and add keyframes to this audio. So I'm going to pull this back. I'm going to play it. So right now I don't see any keyframes down here. So let me click on this again. Let's see here. Dialogue, generate keyframes. Well, I thought it was going to work away here and add some keyframes. Oh, there it did. So I think what happened the first time, the duck against got deselected. Who knows how, but it did. And so now you can see these keyframes down here in the track. Okay, now we don't hear the music at all. Why is that? Well, that's because in the previous exercise we came over and we clicked on the solo button for audio track 1. So I'm going to untarget that, So now it's going to play both the music and the audio. So now I'm going to drag the playhead back here. Notice in the area right, let's see here, where did I see? Right here. When it goes between these two pieces of dialogue, notice it kept the keyframes the same across that. Because there wasn't enough time, it didn't warrant to bring it up and bring it down. So that's why it did that. Now if you had to go back and adjust these, you could press and drag on these keyframes and move them around. So these can be also moved left and right to happen sooner or later. You can also drag on the paths in between frames to adjust the volume between those a couple of keyframes also. So this is really awesome. So I would go ahead and try this. Now if the -8 wasn't enough, you could come over, you could say, okay, let's try -10, generate keyframes. And then it's going to go back and generate the keyframes again with that adjustment. So know that you can go back and adjust things. Let's say it ducked too much. So let me bring it here like the 1 dB and let's just see what happens if the keyframes change. So I'm going to click on dialog and see if they reset here. Up, see how they all reset? So just know that you can try different levels as you work on something here. It looks like it likes to have this reselected and then generate. Let me take a drink of coffee here. There it goes. And depending on how fast your computer is, you can see it go there. A J cut and a split cut on page 260. It's kind of hard to understand what this is. This is where you have some audio from a previous incoming, from not a previous, but from an incoming scene. You have actually some of that audio playing underneath the outgoing clip. So let's say you have a scene where you have a person outside. The next scene is a person inside where the phone's ringing. You may have that phone ringing sound a little bit in the outgoing clip where the person's outside because your brain picks that up, and it's only a short amount of time between when we switch to the other scene. So it's kind of prepping your brain for the next scene, if you want to call it that. Let's come over to page 261. I'm going to come over in my sequences over here, and I'm going to bring up Desert Montage. This is just a series of clips with some music, a music bed underneath it. I'm going to make the track a little bit higher, and basically what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you that if I come over here, I can take the pen tool and I can say click here and here and here, and I'm making random points, and I can bring the volume down here and the volume up here, and I can put a keyframe here and so on. So I can manually put in these keyframes, and this is how we used to do it before we had auto ducking. If you go back over a keyframe, you can right click and delete a keyframe. You can add a keyframe, and when you move it up, you can right click and you can say Bezier or Auto Bezier. And if you're not familiar with Bezier curves, they give you these little handles where you can adjust the cusp or the tangent of that curve so it doesn't affect the other side. And you can see it's logarithmic instead of linear. So you can do that too. That's talked about over here on page 262. I kind of jumped ahead where you can keyframe volume changes. And if you right click, you can smooth out the volume between the keyframes by doing the ease in or ease out or Bezier. So if I go ahead and I right click here, I can say ease in, so it eases the audio level as you come into that, or ease it out. These are actually working with the clip keyframes. These clip keyframes. You also can do track keyframes. Let's see if it talks about this on page 263. Until now, you've made all your keyframe adjustments to sequence clip segments. When working with an audio clip mixer, you will in a moment, you can make adjustments directly to the clips in the current sequence. Well, I'm not going to do that. This is a thing where they bring up a fader control, and as you listen to it, you can drag the fader control up and down, and it will add keyframes. At this level of what we're doing, I think it's overkill. You can see from the pictures in the book, like on page 264, and you can see that it just adds a plethora of keyframes. I think if we use auto ducking or manually set the keyframes ourselves, we're probably better off. Well, Sean, I just wanted you to have that little bit of an overview. Don't forget about the Chapter 11 if you have time. I would dearly love you to go through that, find out how to go in there and improve the sound of the speech, repairing audio, reducing noise. I would take some of the steps from here, actually, write them on a notepad and stick them in my book or stick them someplace, so when I need to go work with audio, I can go right in there and work with the settings directly. So I hope this helps. If you have any questions, go ahead and drop me an email, and have a good rest of summer.